Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for coming back, checking me out. Uh, this is kind of a different video than normal. This video here today, uh, kind of talking about myself a little bit. I just kind of want to, kind of like starting my life over, getting out of my norm type deal. And I may fumble a lot in this video, just so you know, but I got a lot to say, to be honest. And some of it may not make sense. Some of it may make sense. I don't know. But my question is to you is, have you ever had to start over? I mean, like, not from the ground up, but, pretty much starting over your life at a certain age that you didn't think you'd ever start over at. Uh, and the problems you may not have went through in the process of starting over. Um, so that's what this is about. I had a few aches and pains on my starting over process. So I'm going to get into it, get to the backstory. Sorry, my dogs are in the background. Kane, go. Go. Go lay down. Sorry about that. Now that's over with. So to start off with, I hope my mic's on working like it is. So I grew up in a small town. When I was a kid, we moved around a lot. My mom, my sister, and then my younger sister come along. We moved around a lot. But I'm just not going to go through all that. I'm basically going to cut through up to when I first got married. My first wife, yes, I was married twice. My first wife, met her at a campground, become friends. Then the relationship revolved from that. She had 2 daughters of her own already, which really wasn't that big deal to me. I grew up around a lot of kids, help babysit kids, that kind of thing. Her kids were older, they were like 4 and 7, I think, when we met, 4 and 6, something like that, when we met. But when we got married, her 2 daughters gave her away at the wedding because she'd already been married one time before and didn't work. Blah blah blah. That's what we kind of decided on, that factor that her mom and dad done give her away one time. Now we're going to let her daughters give her away, in the symbolic way, so to speak. And I'm going to apologize up front if anybody don't like people smoking. But, this is my channel. I'm going to smoke. So anyway. So her 2 daughters gave us away. They were both dressed in white. They walked her down. We got married on a pond. We was old redneck family, basically. But anyway, we got married in the pond. Everything went good. Had a great time. Married for 17 years. My dad passed away the same year that we split up. I'm not using that as an excuse. It may have had something to do with it. I'm not giving no excuses. Things just didn't work out between the two. We split up. I don't really know what went wrong, to be honest. Like I said, I have no excuses. I can't blame her. Can't blame myself. It's just, I don't know. Maybe neither one of us worked hard enough for it. I don't know. But anyway, so at that point in my life, I started over. I was single, didn't have nowhere to live. At that point, I didn't even have a job. So I was struggling quite a bit. I was struggling with, my dad passed away. My marriage was falling apart, or might as well say fell apart. Didn't have a job. Didn't really have a place to live. Luckily, I had a good uncle that, let me move in with him. And time was tough. I kept trying to find a job. My wife, or my uncle, told me that, I needed to go and get some help through the government, get food stamps, that kind of things, so that we could all, benefit from it. That would be kind of like my rent to him, buying food for the house, groceries for the house. I didn't really want to do it. I felt like other people deserved it more than me. I mean, I was physically able bodied to work. I could get out there and do, stuff that I could do, but I just couldn't find work. I couldn't find nothing. And at the time, I had my dad's old paint van, which was the only vehicle I had at the time. It was a decent running van. It wasn't the best, but it got me from point A to point B and back most days. So only place I could get a job really was temporary service, and I didn't really like temporary services. I was young, I was, I won't say young, but mid-20s. No, wait a minute. I was older than that. I'm sorry. I was already in my 40s. Apologize for that. Early 40s. But I didn't like temporary services because everything I've heard about them and, all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to go work for them for a day, and then we don't have nothing else for you the rest of the week. And then tip service don't have nothing. And I got one day in and, still no job. So I didn't really want to do that. My mom was my backbone then. And my mom and dad was separated when I was a kid, so I still had a close bond with both of them. So mom had started to become more of my backbone than my dad. Everyone was, kind of sort of against me for splitting up with my ex-wife. Even my own family members. I mean, they were saying, well, you should have done this, you should have done that, blah, blah, blah. My mom straight up and said, look, she said, I'm not getting in your business. She said, whatever happened between you and her is between you and her. She said, you're my son. She said, I'm always going to have your back no matter what. She said, but that's y'all's business. She said, it's none of my business. And I said, well, I wish you'd tell everybody else that, including my older sister. Tell her that too, Well, one day I kind of blew up and I told pretty much everybody that was around me, that's what I told them. I was like, look, it don't matter what went on between me and her. Number one, she shouldn't be running her mouth to you. And the only reason she is running her mouth to you is because she's trying to get you on her side and your family. You should back family up, not go against family. I said, number two, ain't none of y'all's business. And I said, and if she starts telling you what went on or what happened or whatever, then you need to kind of tell her it's none of my business. I don't want to hear it, and just stop it. And like I said, I don't know what her issue was. I know what my issues were, but I also felt like it was between, it's basically we just fell apart because things wasn't going in the right direction, I guess. And at least that's how I felt. I don't know. But according to her, everything was my fault. I've never blamed her for anything. I never blamed myself for anything. Only thing I blame myself for is, I probably could have worked harder. That's the only thing I blame myself for. But anyway, so I sat down with my sister and her husband, and we sat there and we talked a little bit, and stuff. And my older sister said, why don't you just go get some food stamps? She said, at least that'll help you out with food, and that kind of thing there, and help you out with Jimmy, my uncle and everything. And I'm like, I just don't feel right because I feel like there's more people out there that need it worse than me. Even though I can't find a job, I still feel like there was people out there that deserved it more than I did. And she said, well, you got to think about it. She said, how long have you worked? I said, since I was 14 years old. Legally 15 years old. That's when they started, when you could get your work permit. And she said, well, then you put money into it, right? And I was like, well, I guess I paid taxes every year, so I guess. She said, well, go apply, see what happens. So I went and applied, and I got like, I want to say $75 to $100, somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly the amount, but it wasn't a whole lot. But it bought groceries, so I'm good with that. So was my uncle; he was good with that. And then I went and got a job, and loved the job. Got paid a salary pay, flat out. No matter whether I worked 2 hours or I worked 200 hours, I got the same pay every week, or every 2 weeks. No, it was every week. Every week. Great job. Loved it. I was get up, go to work, on the road. I deliver packages for DHL. If anybody knows what DHL is, it's kind of like UPS and FedEx. And if you don't know, so anyway, so I went and delivered mail. I drove up in the mountains areas. Most of the areas I knew up through there. Leave out at 7 in the morning. I get back sometimes 12 o'clock. I get back sometimes at 2 o'clock. Sometimes I'd have to drive from Wilkesboro all the way to Greensboro for 2.5 hours to make it before the plane took off to get my patches out, because I had so many deliveries, or I had so many pickups, and I couldn't get back in time for our guy to. We always met at a certain spot. They'd unload my vehicle, put it in his vehicle. He would drive it to Greensboro. Well, sometimes I didn't get back in time. Didn't happen often, but sometimes I didn't get back in time, so I'd have to drive all the way to Greensboro and back. Back to our meetup spot where we left the vehicles. And so I loved it, though. Like I said, there were some days I'd work 4 or 5 hours. There were some days I'd work 10, 12, 14 hours. But the 12, 14 hours hardly ever. It was usually anywhere between 12 to 8, maybe 9 hours a day. It's all I worked every day. Well, they started having some issues, I guess, with money. I don't know what the issues were, but they started having problems. So they changed it. They said, okay, instead of working salary, you're all on hourly pay. And I'm like, okay. So do we get a raise? No. Your pay is going to be based on what you made on your salary. Sorry, my country's tang is coming out. So if you got paid $500 a week, then you make this amount of money an hour, which if you get 40 hours a week, it'll come up to $500 a week. I'm like, okay. Problem with that is I didn't get 40 hours a week. I was getting 15, 20, maybe 35, because like I said, my deliveries were over. When I come back, I couldn't go out and deliver anymore, or do any pickups, because everybody was already doing their pickups, and as they come back, because you go out to the farthest part for your deliveries, and then you start coming back in around your other areas to do your pickups if you had any pickups. So, needless to say, I was one of the ones that drove the furthest out, but I had the least pickups and I had the least deliveries, and that's because I traveled the furthest out. I drove way up in the mountains and everywhere, where other people were going maybe 20 miles, 30 tops out, I was doing 40 to 50, sometimes 60 miles out. I would go right up right up to the North Carolina and the Virginia line. That was my route all the way up to there. I even actually passed the Virginia line on one of my deliveries, but it was so close to the line that's they allowed it. So, in order for me to get some money, I started taking my time. I'd make sure I knew my route. Unless I had something urgent that come up, I knew every spot I was going to and when I had to be at the spot for pickups and whatever. So I would start figuring out my time to where I could get at least 8 hours a day. And sometimes I couldn't do it. It was just, I just didn't have that much to do, so I didn't do it. And other ones would have work where they wouldn't come back until 4:30, 5. Some of them right at the time when the guy was getting ready to pull out at 6. And so because they always had more deliveries or more pickups because they were closer in the area. And so I was a little upset with that. Well, I seen an ad on I want to say it was Craigslist. Back then, Craigslist was a thing. It was pretty big back then. Kind of like your Facebook Marketplace type deal now. It was Craigslist then, pretty much. I believe that's where I saw it. I can't remember for sure, but I believe that's where I saw that. It was an ad for working for this company that went and done remodels. And I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting. And part of it had to do with Lowe's hardware. And I'm like, I worked for I worked for Lowe's hardware for a few years, so I kind of know hose. I kind of know the hose. I kind of knew how Lowe's worked, and I was also one of the people that put in new special products, and done special end caps and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, I'm just going to see if I can't get me an interview with them. Well, it just so happened in one of the areas that I was traveling through, they were going to have a work fair or whatever you call it there. Where you go in, you talk to somebody, you fill out an application, you talk to somebody else, and they said, well, we'll let you know, call you, whatever. So I thought, I'm going to see if I can't set my route up to where I can be there at a certain time or as close to time as I can be. So that's what I did. Well, I knew I was going to be a few minutes late, so I called up and I said, hey, yes, I'm so-and-so. I'm supposed to have an interview with so-and-so. I'm going to be a few minutes late because I'm delivering packages because I'm still working for another company. No problem. Get here when you can. Okay. So I showed up, and the lady said, okay, what's your name? I told her my name. She's like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. We got your phone call. Somebody noted it down, which is kind of surprising. Usually they don't note stuff down like that. If anything, they say, oh, I didn't get a phone call, But anyway, so went there, filled out my application. I didn't even have a pre-interview. They just handed me the application. I filled it out. They called me back. This lady looked at it. This other gentleman was sitting there. At the time, I didn't know they were daughter and son. But she asked me how many years experience I had at Lowe's, and I told her what I used to do at Lowe's. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. She said, well, then you would be perfect for this job. She said, how do you feel about traveling? I said, I feel great about traveling. Yeah, I'm good with it. And so in between getting the new job and having the delivery job, I got me a new vehicle, which ran better. I felt safer to get on the road with it and everything else. So I was good with that. Which at the time, I didn't know, but if I'd known, I would have rather had the other vehicle, the van, because I could have slept in the van and made a whole lot more money. But anyway, so they hired me on the spot. They asked me, said, well, when can you start? I said, I can start next week. They said, okay, we'll get in touch with you. We'll call you. We got your email. We'll send you all the information you need to know, where to be at, what job to be at, what time, all that kind of stuff. Cool. Great. Appreciate it. Well, I was all excited, ready to go do my new job, do stuff that I used, that I already knew with Lowe's. I knew how to get in there and drive a forklift. I can drive the reach lift. I could drive the picker. I could drive any machine out there they had because I've already drove all of them. Plus, I can drive anything with wheels. Just give me a minute or two to see how all the controls work. I'm good. So that's what I done. Pardon me a second. So I done all that, and I got back to the terminal or meet up spot, whatever you want to call it. Told my boss lady there. I said, hey, just to let you know, this week's my last week. I'm starting a new job next week. And she's like, You done what you said you was going to do, wasn't you? I said, what? She said, you said you going to find you another job. I said, yes, ma'am, I did. She said, how'd you do it so quick? I said, I did it today. She said, huh? And I explained to her what I'd done. She's like, oh, well, I can't blame you. You know, they cut back on your hours, you know, and she still made salary because she was the boss, you know. So, you know, I had to do something. You know, I had to get things going. I had to start making more money, or at least keep making the same amount of money I was making. And you know how it is when you're used to so much money coming in, you knew what you had to pay out every day, every week, or every month for bills. You know, once that money goes down, then you're struggling because unless you have a good backup system, which I didn't, and today I be honest, today I still don't. But unless you have a good backup system, you know, you get in struggling mode. You know, you struggle for this, struggle for that, and everything else till you start working yourself back up. And so I started the next job. I only had worked out all the way up through Friday, which I only had like 3 days left. And then, you know, told everybody goodbye, turned in all my shirts, you know, for the company, and turned in my keys, cleaned out that van, my work van, because the work van was mine. I got to keep the same van every day unless it broke down. It's the same vehicle I had every week, you know, every day. So, you know, but I had stuff in it, you know, like my phone holder and that kind of thing. I got all that stuff out, and I left. You know, which me and her are still friends. My boss lady, we're still friends on Facebook and stuff. But you know, so I went on to the next job. My first job was working for a grocery store. Never worked in that grocery store before. Never done anything for the grocery store before. Uh, and I had no money. I had just enough money to get there. And when I got there, they gave me a per diem card. And on that per diem card, it was just enough money to last me through that week. I didn't get more money on the next per diem card until only time you got money on your per diem card is when you get ready to go to the next job. Well, there wasn't a job right at the moment when we got done with this one, so I was kind of out of money. So I had to get the guy that was leading the job to help me get back home, to give me some gas money so I could get back home. And he was about to leave me and forgot about it, and I hollered at him, oh, yeah, that's right. So he got permission from the company to fill my truck up. Luckily, we wasn't too far from home. The truck got pretty good gas mileage. I actually got really good gas mileage, really, for what it was. But so I got back, back to North Carolina because we were just out of North Carolina. We was in Virginia, and got back to North Carolina, and we and that company I got paid every 2 weeks, so it's still going to be a week before I got paid. My first paycheck, and then it was only going to be because they used to. Some companies don't do it no more, but they used to hold a week on you. So I already knew when a first paycheck come, I was only going to get partial payment basically just for 1 week instead of 2 weeks, and it was automatically deposited on my per diem card. So I got my per diem and my paycheck on that card. So that was all fine. And so anyway, my next job was going to be down at the beach in North Carolina, I believe it was. So anyway, that company worked out real great. I had no issues really, no big issues. The biggest issue I had was, I got hired to do a Lowe's, not to do grocery stores. But I got stuck on grocery store anyway. So, sorry. So I decided that I just had enough, and the woman that's my wife now, I knew her from helping her out on a couple of Lowe's that she was doing because she was over Lowe's. And when she needed help, or if anybody else needed help, they would send me because I knew I'd work. I'd go. I didn't care. I stay on the road all the time. Didn't bother me none. As long as I got gone for like holidays to see the family. Especially my mom and my sister, my younger sister, and all that kind of stuff. I was good with it. So anyway, well, I ended up quitting and went back to trying to find another job. My mom was having health issues. I wanted to stay there in case something happened. I wouldn't be, 500 miles away or whatever situation may be. So they didn't want to work with me. They didn't want to give me a couple weeks off. So I said, well, okay, fine. I just quit. After putting in all the hours you needed me to, I'd go from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to New Jersey or to Maine or something like that because they needed someone to help or fill in because they couldn't find a worker. Even though I would do all that stuff for them, it was, no, we can't give you a couple weeks off because of your family. Even though they keep saying they were a family-oriented company, I think the family-oriented company they meant was they had mother and son that was running the company. That was the family-oriented company, I believe. So I got upset. I quit. Got me a part-time job. Moving furniture, loading the dock up for furniture. Worked third shift. That way first shift could come in and start loading trucks up and everything. That was a cool job. Didn't mind it. I got to ride a lift around, raise me up. We used to call them, or they were called order pickers. And so, it was cool. Well, one night I was up in the air and I was pulling a dresser out and I wasn't paying attention where I was walking at and I stepped right off the platform. And thank the good Lord, the harness and everything worked. It caught me, jerked me down. And I barely got myself climbed back up, come back down and got off the lift. And I went and told the boss what happened. They sent me to the hospital. I said that, I had a pulled muscle. My shoulder was fine, but it was bruised where the I guess where the strap come down on me hard or something. I don't know. But so they wanted me to take a couple of days off work and blah blah blah. Okay, cool. Well, I go back to go to work. They don't want me back because I fell off the lift. It happens. I'm not suing nobody. I don't care. I want to go back to work. Well, sorry, and we have nothing else for you. So I'm like, here we go again. No job again. And I was like, all right, fine. Well, like I said, the woman I'm married to now, we were talking back and forth, and I was telling her about what went on, and she said, well, why don't you come back, and I'll try to make sure, because she was real good friends with her boss that was over Lowe's. She said, I'll try to make sure that you work for me or with me, and we'll keep you on the Lowe's side. And I was like, well, if I can stay on the Lowe's side, I'll come back. That's what I got hired to begin with for anyway. So she gets me back in there, and we traveled together. First off, we were separate, rooms, all that kind of stuff. Well, then as things progressed, we got closer, so to speak. And so we worked there for them for a long time, and then went to Hawaii. We spent Thanksgiving and Christmas in Hawaii, which was awesome. If you ever get a chance to go there in Christmas, especially if you get a chance to go to Pearl Harbor, do it. It's awesome. But I mean, how many people can say they can go out there and swim with the fishes in November and December? Not many. That's pretty cool. Got to ride a motorcycle up and down the coast. I mean, it was awesome. Even though we had to work, it was still awesome. It was a brand new Lowe's, 7 days a week, which I didn't mind. More days of work, more money I made. I didn't mind. But anyway, so we ended up leaving that company, going to a different company, and but the shock of the matter was it wasn't the process of changing jobs and that thing. Remember I said my starting over was, my dad passed away. marriage ended, didn't have no job, living with my uncle. Okay, I got all that worked out, right? Started getting back on my feet, was getting back on my feet, was getting back on my feet. And then the bottom dropped out with, them not letting me have some time off. So I struggled there. Well, then I got back, started getting back on my feet again, and it hit me. You're moving away from North Carolina to another state. And that state is 12 hours away from North Carolina. I didn't really want to do it, but I loved and cared for the woman that I was with. So I said, okay, I will, And before you ask, why didn't she move to North Carolina with you? Because she had 2 kids, 2 grown kids. One of them was still in high school. The other one was already out of high school. But, I didn't feel right pulling her away from her kids because, number one, her oldest wouldn't came. Her youngest one wouldn't want to change schools because, number one, she was a senior or junior. And I know if it was me, I wouldn't want to leave the school I was used to going to for so many years to go to a different state. And so I didn't want to put her through that, right? And I didn't think it would be right to put her through that. Plus, she had a real good connection with her grandparents and everything. So, I didn't have no kids. The only thing I had was my family back home. And at the time, we were traveling. So I knew that if we were anywhere close to North Carolina, we could swing by, stay for a few days, maybe even stay the whole week, and then go off to the next job or, whatever. We didn't have to always come home, And we always separated up. One year we'd do Thanksgiving in North Carolina. The next year we'd do Thanksgiving here, and then we'd reverse it for Christmas, So, everything worked out fine. Everything was perfect, Well, I won't say perfect, but everything was good. But there again, started life over again, And now that I'm disabled, and I have been for almost 5 years now, it's another new chapter. It's like no matter what I do or what I try to accomplish, I get to a certain point and everything just falls apart. And so that's what I struggle with. I struggle with that every day. I look at myself and I'm like, what have you become? I feel guilty because my wife goes out and works, and she stayed to traveling. She kept doing the traveling thing until up about a year and a half ago, and they let her go because they were downsizing the company. So, she was one of the ones to go because she was one of the ones that got, hired first or hired last or whatever you call it. And so she had to start back over working at a job making less than what she was making, and so that hurts you, and disability don't pay you nothing. You don't hardly get anything through the disability anymore. It don't matter how many years you work. They only go back so many years, and they based your pay on what you made of those last few years you worked instead of the 20, 40 some year, 50 some years you worked. They don't go back that far, which I think they should. I mean, I paid it for 50 years, so why should I not get 50 years worth of pay added up? I mean, that's my thinking. I mean, the government screws around with my money all the time, so why don't I get that money back? Why do people have to get screwed out of their money when they go on Social Security or disability or whatever it may be, their retirement, all that kind of stuff? Why don't they get that money back? That's what it's for. You should get, if you're paying the talk about me being good steward of my money. What about the government being good steward of my money? They're not. None of them are. I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat. Well, I won't say independent because we never had an independent president. But no matter what it is, government is government, whether it's Democrat or Republican. All of them are at fault for the way they screw around with our money. Every one of them. But with that being said, I am a Republican. But like I said, it don't matter which side of the line you run on. None of the part of the government wants to handle our money the way they should handle our money. Just like when they had the shutdown. The shutdown hurt a lot of people. A lot of people lost jobs. A lot of people had to go get different jobs. Some of them probably don't have a job still yet because of it. All because they can't get together, and work things together. That's why I say if there's a shutdown, every one of them, senators, congressmen, women, all of them should not get paid. And what they would have gotten paid during the shutdown should be diverted back to the employees of the government that don't get a job when they shut down. In other words, TSA, DHS, all of those should have it, should get that pay that our governors and senators should get when they shut down. They shouldn't get it. It should go back to the people. Just like every dime we put into our taxes, federal and state taxes, it should all come back to us when we retire, or if we get disabled, or if we go on Social Security, whatever it may be. That money should come back to us because we paid into it, but we don't. So, in conclusion to this is life's going to give you struggles. Life's going to make you feel like you're getting stepped on every day, daily, hourly, minute by minute sometimes. And the struggle is real. I have the struggle. I struggle with myself feeling less of a man because I can't go out and work and provide for my wife. I can't go out and provide for the needs and the desires that my wife wants. And I feel like that's my job. But I can't do it because I'm disabled. I can't walk far for my legs to get numb. I can't sit a long period of time or my back starts bothering me. I can't stand for a longer time or my legs go numb. I can't pick up a lot of weight, a lot of heavy stuff. If I do, I'm down for the next 3 or 4 days. I can't do that stuff. But when 8 years ago, I'm going to say 8 because I started feeling the problem with my back before I got disability. But 8 years ago, I could have done it. It wouldn't have been no problem. I'd climb down the ladder, do what I got to do this, do that. It wouldn't have mattered because I had no issue with that. But, without having my back surgery, and I don't even know if my back surgery is even going to work. It's a 50-50 chance. Well, at the time it's 50-50 chance, and that was 3 years ago. I've got to get my weight down. That's something else I've got to work on. And I got to quit smoking. That's everything that piles up on you. You get one thing started, something else throws a curve in or throws a rock in it, and you got to climb that rock to get to the next part. You get to it, then you get another one, and you got to climb over that rock. It's just a endless cycle that we all go through. And if you're having issues and you're having problems, and especially a lot of people has mental problems with this, I do. I sit back at home and I'm thinking, I'm just worthless because I can't get up and go get in my vehicle every morning and go to work and come back. And no, my wife would have to work still yet, regardless. But she wouldn't be the only one having to provide. Now I provide with my check, but like I said, that's a once a month check. It pays for the bills. Well, I should say it pays for part of the bills. That week I get paid. By Friday or Monday of the following week, my check's gone. Because we have, car payment, house payment, power bill, phone bill, all that kind of stuff we all have. Yeah, I could do away with my satellite. I could do away with my internet if I really wanted to. I wouldn't be able to be on here or be able to do anything, but I could get away with it if I wanted to. I can't get rid of my phone because my wife, sometimes she has some issues that causes her to kind of zone out sometimes, and that's another thing that worries me. I would rather be out there working than her have to be out there working. Because when she has them moments, sometimes it happens when she drives, and it's not safe for her. And before if she can catch it in time, she's fine. But if she don't catch it in time, she could be swerving all the road like she's drunk, and she's not. So that stuff like that worries me. And we're going on 10 years now being married. You know, this July 16th, it'll be 10 years that we've been married. You know, and I don't want anything to happen to her, but I want to get out there and get back to work. But me, 54 years old, if I can get my weight and my smoking down, which my weight's coming down a little bit, if I can get all that coming down, then I'll be fine. I'll like I said again, I gotta quit the smoking. But if I can get my weight down enough to where I feel comfortable and to quit smoking, because I don't know how many of you ever quit smoking, but usually if you quit smoking, you go to eating more. I don't want to eat more. I want to eat less. I want to keep losing the weight. I don't want to gain the weight back. So that's the kind of struggle that I struggle with on a daily basis. It's not every once in a while. It's a daily basis thing that I'm working on. It's hard to lose weight when you can't go out and do certain things. But it's like I said, I'm working on things to I've lost about somewhere around 20 pounds maybe in the last 3 months, 4 months. I know that don't sound like a lot, and it ain't a lot. But when you're like me and you can't get up and do a lot of movement, you can't go to a gym and work out, or you can't walk up and down the road, or you can't stand in your own house and do jumping jacks or bends. And when you can't do stuff like that, the only thing you can do is do a limited burst, I guess you could say, of exercise, which I do sitting down. And that's the only way that I've been able to lose some weight. I went on to fasting. I've done some fasting, 6 hours at a time. Then I went to 8 hours, and I went to 10 hours, and I went to 12 hours. I didn't get past 12 hours, but I kept at 12 hours for quite a few weeks. And it seemed like I wasn't losing any weight, and I slid back from that and started eating, twice a day. Sometimes I ate 3 times a day. And lo and behold, I started losing a little more weight again. So my next adventure on here is going to be with weight loss. I'm really getting vulnerable with you guys, and I really don't want to be honest. But I want to document it, and if anybody else out there is having the same issues I'm having, then maybe I can help them out, or maybe we can help both people out. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry for that, getting tongue tied. If I can help anyone out with what I'm going to be going through, I'm getting vulnerable, I'm putting it all on here. So, but if I can help anyone out, or that person that looks at it can help me out, or we can help, me and 2 or 3 or 4, maybe other people can help others out, then that would be great. So I'm going to leave it at that. I thank you for stopping by. I hope you made it to the end. I know this was a long one. Most people don't like listening to people talk like this for a long period of time. And again, I do smoke. If you don't like me smoking on my videos, I'm sorry for you, but I'm not apologizing for me, because this is my channel, and what it's doing is it's another documentation of showing that I can't sit long without smoking a cigarette. And if I can quit smoking, y'all going to see that progression go to where I'm not smoking on camera. If I'm not smoking on camera, I'm not smoking in behind the scenes of the camera either, because a lot of times I can't go 5 minutes without smoking a cigarette. I'll just be honest with you. And that's a bad thing. It's very bad, especially with cigarettes as much as they are now. But I appreciate you stopping by. Like, share, subscribe. If someone else is having the same issues of going through that deal with, I should be out there working, not my wife, or at least I should be out there helping my wife working, so we can get the money that we need. And I mean, it's hard for me to go home now because I don't have the money to drive 12 hours and stay and then drive back 12 hours. It's usually the last time I went home, I was there for 1 day. And, I say 1 day because I got there that afternoon, got up that next morning, went to a funeral, got up the next morning, and I was gone. So if you had all the hours together, I was probably there 24 hours, if that. I can't afford that a lot of times, especially now that everything going up. Even hotels is going up. When you used to be able to get a hotel for $60 a night,
Now it's 80 some bucks a night, $90 a night, and it's the same hotel, the things, nothing's changed. Just got the same 1975 carpet on the floor, and 1984 blanket on the bed, and a TV that's about as big as my screen on my phone here, you know. So nothing's changed in the hotel but the prices. But anyway, like I said, thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys, and remember one thing: if you don't remember anything else that I said in this video, remember this right here. It's the most important thing. Jesus loves you, and He wants to see you in heaven with Him. Amen. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.